podcast presented by Bet365. We are part of the Action Network. I am Chad Millman, Chief Content Officer of the Action Network. Joining me on the show is my co-host, my companion, my compadre, my BFF, professional bettor, Simon Hunter. Hello, Simon.
Hello, Chad. How we doing, brother?
Dude, we got a great show. I'm super excited about this show because the NBA, I am like hardcore NBA hoophead. And like to me, I have always loved the drama of the NBA, the high school drama of the NBA, as much as I love the game itself. The draft is this week, free agency is on the horizon. The NBA has built a brilliant machine where we go from finals to draft to free agency. I feel like this guest we have today has experienced the peak of every one of the events that is coming up, especially free agency in the most dramatic ways. I think it's fair to say, Simon, he has had some of the coolest free agency moments that have leaked into the public eye. He started as a high school state champion in Florida, became the first Florida Gator. Think about that. The first Florida Gator to win SEC Player of the Year in college. And it wasn't a guy who was on those back-to-back title teams for Billy Donovan. Enjoyed a 9-year NBA career for the Rockets, Mavs, Grizzlies, Hawks. Currently a co-host of Run It Back, the NBA show on FanDuel TV. Welcome to the show, Chandler Parsons.
Appreciate you guys having me. How we doing?
Listen, this is a pre-record, so I want to give people a heads up. Before we got on the show, we talked about the fact that Jerry West had just died. And you're I think at the FanDuel studios, and Shams was there, and you had mentioned how he had just tweeted this, and then you're talking to him. So of course I asked you, like, you have run in NBA circles for going on 15 years now. Give me the Jerry West story that you just shared with Simon and I before we came on the air.
Yeah, so it's crazy. He's such a legend. He's such an icon in our game and our industry, and so it just doesn't feel right. I literally saw, Jerry and his family. They were in Palm Springs like a month ago, 2 months ago, and I'm playing in this golf tournament, and we're all sitting there shooting the shit in the mittens lounge, and he walks in. He's got this G4 hat on. It just says logo, and I'm like, wow, that's awesome. Like, that's fucking sick hat. And I kind of make a comment on him and say hi to him. And he's always been great. Jerry's one of those guys that, whether you play on one of his teams or you don't, he's always kind of talking to you in the hallways and the locker rooms. And he's hilarious, man. The way he would curse and swear is like, no, he mastered it. And so I've always had a great relationship with him. And I see him the next day walking, through the clubhouse, and he just kind of looks at me and he takes the hat off and he throws me the hat. So literally, like, my last memory of the West legend is, I'm going to wear it tomorrow on the show. I have this G4 just sick white hat that says logo on it.
What I've always loved about NBA players, as much as I think more than actually NFL players, Major League Baseball players, NBA players are massive, massive basketball NBA fans. There is a sort of an honor for the history and the players. I feel like I see that. I think it's also because NBA players are just much more engaged in social media at the highest level. So you see how they're reacting to excellent play throughout the playoffs, throughout the NBA finals. Did you feel that? Did you get that sense when you were playing, and now that you're sort of an alumni?
Yeah, 100%. And now it's crazy because you see all the comparisons. I think now with analysts and media, we get a little ahead of ourselves with the Anthony Edwards, Michael Jordan comparisons, and Wemby being the best of all time. It's because these kids are so talented that they do have a chance to do that, but it's a silly argument. It's a silly, you could go back and forth on, the greatest of all time argument, or, the best defensive player. There's so many arguments that are just so hypothetical that we'll never know. They're all opinionated. But yeah, me as a guy, a normal kid, I grew up in Orlando, Florida, dude. I was obsessed. My grandpa had season tickets to the Magic, so I'd go to, 4 or 5 games a year with him, and I just loved Shaq and Penny. And then I loved those Celtics teams kind of, when I was really young with, Bird and McHale. And fast forward 2011, I get drafted, and the guy who's calling me from the Houston Rockets to draft me is Kevin McHale. So like shit like that, where it's just kind of full circle. Had to pinch myself like, man, this is a dude that I just idolized growing up. And now he's calling me, like welcoming me to the NBA, which I dreamed of since I was a kid watching this dude. So things like that. I've always been such a huge NBA buff. I know I still, obviously I work now in the industry, but I watch every single game. It could be the Pistons Hornets on a Tuesday, like I'm tuning in, or I watch old games too from back in the day. So I've always just been such a basketball junkie, and so I have a lot of respect for the players that came before me, and I have tremendous respect for these next up and coming wave of superstars that are changing the game before our eyes.
Well, let's get into it. As a reminder, the Favorites podcast is presented by Bet365. Bet365 doesn't do ordinary. That's why you get more boost with them than with anyone else. Every day, they power up the odds on hundreds of bets to give you a chance to win more. Bet365 boosts specific markets, your winnings, and even parlays. They don't stop there. Keep an eye out for their biggest and best odds with the incredible Super Boost. Check out the boost and see why it's never ordinary at Bet365. Must be 21 or older and present in Arizona, Colorado, Indiana, Iowa, Louisiana, North Carolina, New Jersey, Ohio, Virginia, or 18 and older in Kentucky. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa. Terms, conditions, restrictions apply. Catch every episode of The Favorites live on YouTube for those enjoying on YouTube. Don't forget to give us a like and subscribe to the Action Network YouTube page. All right. We're weeks away from NBA free agency. It has become a massive moment for the NBA. As if you are an NBA fan, it's as big a moment for NBA coverage as any part of the year. The drama, the gossip, the speculation. Top free agents right now. I'm going to give you a list. You can add Tyrese Maxey, Paul George, LeBron conversations, Pascal Siakam, OG Anunoby. Handicap where you think these players land. And tell me, are we missing a key player who can make a big difference somewhere?
Well, it's interesting. Everyone wants to talk about the LeBron thing just because of what's at stake, and the Lakers are basically 2 weeks away and don't have a head coach. So that whole aspect of it, and all the Hurley drama, and that kind of makes that one a little spicier. And with Bronny coming, is what's going on there? Is there a deal in place? Everyone likes to have, their opinion on that. But the names you just named, I imagine they all pretty much go back. I think Indiana's going to re-sign Siakam. I think Philly is going to lock in Maxey. The one that's interesting is Paul George. I still think he goes back to the Clippers. Everything they got going on there, that core, those guys, they're built to win now. And Paul George is a huge piece of that going into the new arena. I think he might be the one that would stay or to leave. You see maybe Philly would be in play there. That could be interesting. Jimmy Butler, you hear the rumors of maybe where he's going to go. Is he going to go back to Philly? Is he going to kind of re-sign in Miami? So it's crazy because there's not one like DeMar DeRozan, what's he gonna do? So there's all these names where like you just don't know, and it just feels like their current teams are gonna kind of hold them and re-sign them to longer deals, which they all deserve. They're all great players. They're all kind of going into their prime, or still have a lot of good basketball left. So it's always interesting. There's always going to be some surprises. There's always going to be some deals. You see Hartenstein is going to get 80 plus million. So someone like that just had a hell of a year. And the come up and the rise he had just shows how valuable his versatility, his rebounding, everything he brings to the table. It's going to get you $80 to $100 million these days. So it's crazy. So it's always fun. It's always exciting. But I think those names, for the most part, I think we'll see them back on their current teams.
So I'll be up top. I'm a Philly fan. You think there's no outside shot they can do the Maxey and Paul George for Embiid? Like just try to get three guys, like two other guys with Embiid, and because it just. I love Tobias as a person. It just never worked, right? Whatever that was, he just did not mesh with Embiid's playing style and the system. They said not that they set him up to fail, but he should have kind of been what Maxey turned into, right? A guy that had the ball in his hand, was pushing the basket and points. So I'd love to get your view. Do the Sixers even have a chance of Paul George? Or is this another team, another year of them having a ton of money left over and they're just kind of spend it on kind of fillers?
Yeah, I do think they need that third star. I think, like you
Me
said,
too.
Tobias has run its course. I think it just didn't pan out. How it kind of ended with the crowd booing him, and him just it doesn't feel like there's any way in hell he's going back there.
Yeah.
And I'm with you. I love Tobias as a person. I love him as a player. He's versatile. He can post up off the block. He can take a big off the dribble. He can play multiple positions. I just think for what they need, I think Paul George, yeah, I think there's a shot. I think they could offer him a lot of money. I think you're seeing the success with the Nuggets and the Celtics, how they have the dynamic duos, Murray and Jokic and Brown and Tatum, and then they fill the rest of that roster out with unbelievable role players. I think that's going to start being the format for success in the NBA. You got to find the Michael Porters, you got to find the Derek Whites that are just so valuable to your team. And now even those guys, when their contract up, they're going to get paid $20+ million a year. So I think with everything going up, the money going up, the days of the big three is tough because then you have to find guys that are going to be, productive and take less money. So I would love Paul George to Philly. I think he immediately makes them a contender. I think he really is exactly what they need. He's that wing that can go score. He can defend. He's a two-way player. So I would love that in Philly. And I just don't, I can't see him leaving for whatever reason. With everything going, the new arena, like I said, that team, Kawhi, all them being kind of LA local dudes, I just can't picture him leaving yet.
Is there a game-changing player in the market coming up that you think will switch teams and could be that impact player to elevate someone
You're talking about in regards to Philly or just in any
in
team?
free agency generally?
Yeah, you know what? The rumors of Donovan Mitchell, I think that those were kind of hot there for a while, and then you heard the disconnect with him and JB Bickerstaff. So now that they moved on from JB, I look for Donovan to kind of re-sign and be that foundation piece in Cleveland. But he was interesting. Could see him maybe going to like a Lakers. You hear the DeJounte Murray, Trae Young. Both those guys are extremely talented. They haven't really panned out together either, but they're both such elite scorers. They're both hoopers. You could plug those two guys on a lot of different teams and have success there as well. So there are a lot of players out there. There's always going to be players on the move. There's always going to be players that are underpaid. There's always going to be players that are overpaid. So it's always such a fun time. But Trae Young, to me, I think Trae Young, for whatever reason, whether it's personality wise, whether it's the coaches that have been fired under, while coaching him, he's gotten this bad rep. And I played with Trae. He's not a bad dude. He might have been a little immature coming into the league, but he's so talented, dude. And he can shoot the ball from so deep. He creates so much attention. He can pass. He's for a small guy, he defends. So I think he's a guy that once he goes to a team where he's not the best player and he's not the go-to guy, I think his maturity and how he's gotten older, I think he's really going to thrive if he does go to a different system, a different style of play where he's not the go-to guy, but he can still have the capability of erupting for those 30, 40-point games.
What does that look like when you're Trae Young, you're a top 5 pick, massive expectations, the trade between the Mavs and the Hawks with him and Luka. How does that immaturity manifest itself when you're just joining the team?
It's tough because when you have such high expectations and you are young, and he's a scoring guard coming out of OU, right? So that's all he knows, and he's always been capable of being that pass first guard. But since he's been in Atlanta, it's been his team. They've given him the keys. He's the head of that snake, so he's been relied on and counted on to score a lot of buckets, and he has a lot of success. Listen, the dude's been an all-star. The dude has had a hell of a career. They just haven't won at the level I think they're going to win. Atlanta has so much talent. I thought they were going to be one of those teams that was going to be a home court advantage team this year. I thought they were going to be a top 4 team in the Eastern Conference. And they just didn't cut it. And I think the trade with DeJounte Murray sounded good on paper, like a lot of these do, and then it just didn't gel together. But Trae Young, when you're that young and you have that much on your plate, it's hard, man. The expectations to carry a team, to gain the respect and the trust of older guys in the locker room. And like I said, I think the older he gets, the more mature he gets. He's always been the best player on his team. So the minute he does go to a San Antonio or a different look like that, where he can kind of be relied on as a leader and not a scorer, I think we'll see Trae Young kind of take back off again.
Yeah, that's interesting, right? There might just be guys who are not built for being the leading scorer and the leader of the team. There's guys like Luka who are stone cold killers. And I think we've seen this with Kyrie, right? Where Kyrie is a brilliant talent. NBA players adore him and look at his skill set and think his shot making, his ball handling, they don't care about anything else other than his skill set, right? And we've seen in Dallas, not so much in the finals as we're recording this so far, but his ability to take a back seat as the guy who has to be the face of the franchise, as he was able to do with LeBron in Cleveland. there's just a massive difference in how he plays day to day without that level of pressure.
Yeah, and that's exactly my point with Trey. Once he has a teammate like a Luka and he understands that it's okay to be 1B. And you see all this stuff with Tatum and Brown where Jay Kidd's saying, he's the best, Brown's the best player. And it's almost like when you have success like that, winning cures everything. And even on our show on Run It Back, we try and nitpick the Boston Celtics, and they're 14-2 in the postseason. They've been absolutely dominant. They have literally cakewalked to the finals, and they've been dominating the Mavericks in the finals. And we still try and say, oh, well, Tatum's an inefficient scorer. I'm like, he's doing enough for his team to be up 2-0 and the NBA Finals on the way. So when you look at Kyrie Irving this year, no one's talking about the negativity, the headlines, the negative shit about Kyrie Irving, because he's been hooping and he's taken that maturity to a next level where he doesn't care if he's the best player on the team. He knows it's Luka's team. Some nights he is going to be the best player on the team. Some nights he is going to carry the offensive load. And he's struggled a little bit too in these first two games with everything, the storylines going back to Boston. I really look for him to have a huge game 3 here tonight. But it's just to see Kyrie Irving kind of take on that ownership and just be happy and back to playing basketball is unbelievable, because it's never been about the talent with Kyrie Irving. He's always had that. He's always been productive on the court. He's always been so fun to watch. Watching this dude dribble and finish it's beautiful. And so to see him do this now and correlating to wins, that's when your career kind of takes over. That's when you get respect. Jaylen Brown wants all NBA. He wants all this. You get once he wins the championships, he'll get all that. I guarantee it.
So you mentioned Isaiah Hartenstein before, and he is on the verge of getting a massive deal. You've been in that spot. You've been in that spot a couple times. Describe the process of going through NBA free agency. You famously signed one of your deals in a club with Mark Cuban and the Mavericks, which is great. But what it's like to go through that process and when you realize you're about to sign a deal for $15-20 million a year.
Yeah, well, it's awesome. And you try not to worry about it while you're playing. But like for Hartenstein's situation, like now that he's done, he obviously has an agent that's in constant communication. It's funny because the NBA thinks these deals are at midnight at July 1st. You go, there's talks before that, and there's deals in place, or else you wouldn't see the Shams and the Woj bombs at 12:01 of guys signing deals. Like it's ignorant to think that that's not happening, but it's crazy. And to a normal fans get so mad and so shocked when they see a guy get paid. And it's you pay a player for what they've done and what you hope they do. So Isaiah Hartenstein, he's had a hell of a season. He was so good and so valuable for the Knicks. He's going to get $80 million because of that. And they hope that he does that, continue to do that. But barring an injury or, whatever happens, he might not. So that's the risk a team takes. So when I went to free agency, I had a knee surgery, and I was kind of going through a rehab when I first signed my big deal. Well, that was my second deal, but my deal in Dallas, it was interesting because I was a second round pick. And I had a team option in my third and fourth year. And I was lucky enough to play right away in my career. And I became a starter like my 6th game of my career. And Dan Fagan, rest his soul, he was my agent. And he had Dwight Howard, who was a huge free agent up and coming that summer. And so he repped a lot of guys during that time that were studs. DeMarcus Cousins, John Wall, DeAndre Jordan. He had like 8 to 12 max players. And I'll never forget, he has a meeting in Houston where it's me, him, Daryl Morey, and I think Tad Brown, who's the CEO of the Rockets. And we're talking about my upcoming free agency. And because they could have easily just picked up my team option my 4th year, or I think I was slotted to make like $940,000 or something. And at that point, I'm averaging like 17, 6, and 5. Like I'm the trajectory is going up. And he says, if you have any chance of Dwight Howard the following summer, you're not picking up Chandler's 4th year. And I just remember Daryl was looking at him like, what the fuck is that? What do you mean? He's like, if you want to pair these two together with James Harden and you want to get Dwight Howard, I'm his agent. You're not picking up Chandler's 4th year. And kind of like use that leverage to strong arm an actual free agency. So I was lucky enough to have him do my first deal where I got out of my rookie contract a year early. And I had developed a relationship with Mark Cuban through All-Star Weekend and through mutual friends to where when that free agency come, Mark had put together this offer with like a trade kicker and a player option and a max deal, basically put a gun to Houston's head to where they eventually didn't match the contract. But yeah, he came, he flew to Orlando. I had a party at my house and I went to this nightclub. I forgot the name of the nightclub, but we're all there and we're in the club and Cuban comes walking in with like literally like a fucking manila folder. And I remember I was making my hometown Orlando and they stop the music, they turn on the lights, and literally like he opens it and I sign my actual deal, my max deal in a nightclub in downtown Orlando. It was epic.
That kind of sets up a celebration perfectly. So what happens next?
Well, I mean, I had obviously knew that we had agreed to terms and stuff. So he literally, I remember we had a night, and I think he either flew the next morning or flew right out of there. And that's kind of when free agency starts. So then I hadn't even been to Dallas yet. I haven't done any of that stuff yet. So I mean, the next day I'm on a plane to Dallas, and I'm meeting everybody, and you know, there was a period there where I had to wait to see if Houston was going to match, which was nuts too, because this all could have been for nothing. And imagine me going back to Houston after I sign a contract with the rival owner in a nightclub. But it was just a crazy time. And that's just the kind of owner Mark Cuban is. He's so cool. He's such a player's owner and he's so involved and he gets to know you and your family. And outside of all the business stuff and the investing stuff, he really is just a cool, dope dude that you just want to play for someone like that.
Famously, you're involved in that Cuban signing at the club. And it's like, I think a year or two later, you and Cuban are recruiting DeAndre Jordan to come to the Mavs and join your team. Explain that process because it has become one of the most famous free agency recruitment stories that has happened in sort of the times of free agents frenzies.
Yeah, that was a nuts time, and like I mentioned earlier, Dan Fagan was my agent. He had also repped DeAndre Jordan, so I lived in LA in the summer, so we'd kind of work out together. We'd spend quite some time together, just getting to know one another. I had known him before, again through like mutual people, but uh, I'm in Dallas, and we're pretty good. And we got me, and we got Dirk, we got Monte Ellis. There's a time there we had to kind of shuffle point guards with Jameer Nelson and D. Will and Rondo for. So we had the pieces in the core going forward, and Tyson Chandler was great for us. And uh, we wanted DeAndre Jordan. He was a big time target for us. We thought his time had ran out in LA, and he wanted a bigger role. And he fit perfect what we were doing, running gun, Rick Carlisle offense, a lot of pick and rolls, a lot of lobs, and he was the king of Lob City. So I just start recruiting him, normal relationship, nothing extra. Just I thought this is basically like he's my boy. I mean, I really want to play with him. I know it's going to be great for his career. I know it's going to be great for my career. So I start doing that, and man, we spent every day together that summer leading up to it. We started hanging out, and like I said, Cuban's very involved as well. So he's kind of hanging out with us. We're going out. And I just remember we get the commitment from him and we're stoked. I mean, we went to Shellbacks in Manhattan Beach. We're getting hammered. Like it's such a good day. I remember Blake Griffin, who was on the Clippers with DeAndre Jordan, came with us to like the celebration of like just like DJ leave it, like you know what I mean? Like 'cause we're all friends. So it was done deal. And I remember I get on a plane and I go to Vegas, and this is where I tweet an airplane emoji. And this is when the viral whole emoji war, because at that time you start seeing these reports, DeAndre Jordan's having cold feet. And I'm like, I remember my boys are sending it to me, and I'm like, nah, dude, like I was just with them. Like I just left, like no shot. We're looking at houses together in Dallas. Like I'm putting them with the realtors, and it's a done deal. He looked Cuban like you're not gonna lie to an owner of a team, especially Mark Cuban. And then so I'm talking to Dan Fagan, and Dan Fagan's not hearing from DeAndre. And so now I'm like, oh, this is weird. Like that's when I first kind of my stomach dropped because I'm like, okay, now he's not talking to me. He's not talking to his agent. And that's kind of when the whole social media thing just blew up where, you know, Blake is locking him in the house with the chair. And Mark was in Houston. Mark had flew, or it was Houston or LA. I forget exactly where it was, but Mark was like at his house, but DeAndre wouldn't answer his phone, and no one around answers his phone. So literally, I think I was in Vegas at the time, so it was all just chaos, and I just can't believe it's going to happen. This was a slam dunk. This is no way it's not going to happen. And sure enough, I mean, I think he got cold feet, and I think the Clippers, which again at the time I was so shitty, I was so salty, I was mad as fuck. I was like, "Come on, are you kidding me? This was going to put us over the edge. We were going to be the best team in the NBA the next year." And it worked out. It worked out for him. He had a great career. I think he was, defensive player of the year, all NBA that year, and he worked out. But it was just such a crazy time, man, because it was such a done deal, and then it just wasn't out of nowhere. And it wasn't just like recruiting a normal free agent. This was my boy. Like I had a previous relationship with him.
Well, yeah, I mean, you mentioned the social media wars, and like, look, there is nothing better than NBA Twitter. And especially, like I said, because the players are so much more active. The players are such big fans of what's happening in the league that they get so involved. You tweeted the plane. I think Blake Griffin might have tweeted a car. Chris Paul, that was the banana boat vacation, where the picture of him, Melo, D Wade, and LeBron. He left that vacation, and then that's where Blake Griffin tweeted the picture of him of a chair barricading the door. Listen, I have tried to recruit talent for years in all various jobs. I know that feeling in the pit of your stomach when things have gone sideways. It's excruciating.
Oh, dude, this is a bad beat. And to top it off, this asshole goes to the Mavs 2 years later when I leave the Mavs. So we never even got to cross paths and play with each other. So it was a crazy time. And again, I think Michael Jordan tweeted an emoji. I think Kobe or the Lakers tweeted like the championship trophy. So like that whole thing really just took off. And that's just like the new age of social media and what can happen and stuff. This would never happen back in the day, but that was such a crazy time. And I'm still to this day, I'm friends with DJ, and we definitely had a little falling out there for a while after that, because I feel like how could you not? But that was definitely one of the craziest stories. And that's just kind of my personality. I've always been very personable. I have great relationships with a lot of cool people. And so when it comes to free agency or something like that, if it's recruiting for my agent, if it's recruiting for my team, I always wanted to have the best and to be the best. So I would always kind of put myself out there and do things like that. But yeah, this one backfired.
Well, I know Simon has a question he wants to ask you, but I do want to follow up with that. There is a very sort of congenial appeal I think you've carried yourself with through your career, where that puts you in the position to be in the club with Mark Cuban to sign the contract, to be in the room with Jerry West where he's tossing you a hat, to be the key point of contact with DeAndre Jordan when you're trying to recruit him. That doesn't happen to everybody in the NBA. Why does it keep happening? Why does it keep happening to you?
I don't know, man. I just always been that type of dude. I've always been personable. I've always been pretty easygoing. I can relate to, all different walks of life. And so I don't know. It's just how I was raised. I'm the youngest of four boys, so I was always kind of hanging with the fellas and always competing and laughing. And so through this career and through this whole journey of the NBA, you meet so many cool people. You're lucky enough to do so many cool things and events and people you would never think you're gonna meet, let alone be friends with. And Dirk Nowitzki was a hero of mine, like Mikhail, and the guy was at my wedding last year. Like it's just crazy how fast everything happens. And I think that's just kind of the type of personality and who I've always been and who I always will be. And it's been a lot of fun.
Chandler, I was talking to a bunch of guys, and I would love to hear your opinion on it because you're in it. But these insiders now working with the sports books, like, is that like the new age we're in now? Where like, again, it's not Sham's fault, but he's throwing tons of shade at Woj because Woj is trying to make him look bad, right? With these reports. And you probably don't realize there's a whole market behind it. Like you can bet on who's going to be the Lakers' next head coach. So I would love to know your view on it, where it's like, these, like, again, Shams just trying to do his job, right? He's just putting out there the information he's getting at the time. Does he know he's moving whole markets for the company he works for, or is that not even crossing his brain where he's just doing his job?
No, dude, Shams, I can only speak on, he's a savant. He doesn't think about, oh, I'm gonna tweet this about Porzingis tonight because it's gonna move the line and we're gonna he did probably doesn't even gamble. First of all, we can't even gamble in California and FanDuel. So the whole him and Woj thing I thought was hysterical yesterday. The whole him saying,
Hysterical.
yes, dude. That's because they have their whole. That's how Shams got into the business, and they've had their
Yeah.
whole tiff. And there's two guys, right? It's Woj and Shams. So the fact that they're always out trying to outscoop each other is hilarious. But I work with the dude 5 days a week, and he's a vault. So I don't know how he does it, but he's established so many relationships. And he doesn't say a word. Today, I was just sitting there in the conference room, kind of doing my pre-show notes, and I get an alert on my phone and it says Jerry West had passed. And like I was just sitting with Shams for 20 minutes and he didn't bring it up, didn't mention it one time. So he's just a machine, dude. And he's just always working. You watch our show, half the time he's on his phone. I always want to play a prank on him and steal his phone just to see how much he'd fucking panic. But no, it is crazy because they do have the power. And obviously you see that. And this Lakers search in particular was crazy because it's always been JJ, and then you look back and you're like, wait, Woj works with him at ESPN. He has kind of stayed away from it, so it doesn't really make sense because wouldn't he have the end before Shams? And then this whole bomb gets dropped about Dan Hurley, and then but they hadn't met with him yet, and they hadn't even made an offer. So like, it's hard. I guess it's funny. Like I think both of them are very good at their job. They're both very credible, but it's funny when there's a situation like this. Yeah, like you could be doing a favor for somebody. Woj could be posting that, for leverage for Hurley because he's got friends with him. Now he's got leverage to go back to UConn and hit them over the head for more money. So when you have guys like that with so much power, it is tricky. But unfortunately, Shams doesn't dime me out with any info. That bastard. He doesn't tell me anything, or else I'd be putting a lot of money on who the Lakers' next coach is. I work with the guy every day. I still don't fucking know.
Well, don't forget, Woj, not only is he locked in through the NBA, as is Shams, Woj also literally wrote the book on
Right.
Bob Hurley Sr. Like he has a famous, incredible best-selling book about Bob Hurley and his high school coaching career long before he became a massive NBA insider. So both dudes are crazy connected, and this story has seemed to put them in the center of everything they are connected to beyond their next level of connection.
And by the way, everything is relationship driven in life. Like Billy Donovan Jr. just got the G League coach of the Chicago Bulls. Like, you think that was because he's the best candidate? You think it's because they love Billy? You know what I mean? Like it happens everywhere. You're seeing it with Bronny James. You see it all the time with coaches getting hired and fired based on relationships with the star player. So in every aspect, especially in sports and especially in media, it comes down to relate. Like right now, I could have Shams tweet something as a favor for me. Like, you know what I mean? Would he do that? Would it hurt his, then he's got to figure that out himself. But it's all come down to relationships.
You mentioned Rondo, and he's a guy who famously, from players' points of view, is a basketball savant, can remember anything. People I remember when he was on the Celtics would talk about him as if he was the most brilliant player in the league and would be an incredible coach one day. What's it like to play with him? Explain sort of the difference at a level between what he can see versus what other players see.
Well, I think that's why him and Rick Carlisle also butted heads so much, is because Rick is very hands-on, wants to call a set each time down the floor. He wants his point guard to kind of look at him and get a play call. Rondo is a coach like on the floor, and he wants to kind of facilitate the offense and just go off his feel, which he had earned that right at that time of his career. He was a champion. He's super successful. He was an absolute stud, and it's the way he carries himself. He sees things faster. He sees things develop before most coaches do. So I think when you have that sort of brain and that sort of IQ, it is tough to adapt to a coach, and that's why their relationship went south. But it was awesome playing with him. You basically always had to have your hands up and ready because he could just throw a one-hand skip pass across the court, or he could throw a no look behind the back dime to you just out of nowhere. So playing with that, guys make the game easier for you. Rondo made the game a lot easier. He gets you a lot of open looks. Think about this. Think about how good of a passer and how easy he makes the game for players, and he can't shoot. So like guys, you know what I mean? It's like most times it's like a Steph Curry, most time it's someone like this who draws so much attention where, okay, swing, now Draymond Green has a wide open three. Rondo, they try and guard him a bunch of different ways. They try and pressure him. They try and play up on him. Then they play back on him because he can't shoot. But then that gives him even more of a look because he can see more things. So he's a special player. And he's awesome. We had him on the show too. I can definitely see in him be a coach because, like I said, the way he carries himself, the way he sees the game, he can really help some of these young guards in the league now kind of facilitate and navigate throughout their career.
Now, like you were saying, you became a starter, 6 games in. You remember like a real welcome to the league kind of rookie moment you had where you were just like, oh man, this is different.
Yeah, I had a couple. The draft night call from Kevin McHale was fucking bonkers. I was like, okay, this is real. Like I'm in the NBA. Like this is nuts. And then I remember my Courtney Lee, who was my boy, it's in my wedding party. He was like my vet, and I had known him from Orlando, just growing up there. And when he put on the Magic, we'd play pickup together in the summers and stuff. And he was my vet. When I get drafted to Houston, I'm the 2nd round pick, and they drafted Marcus Morris first round, like end of lottery, and then they drafted a guy Demonis Mationis, the Lithuanian lefty. He was like their 24th pick or something. So we go in there, and Courtney Lee is talking about, he's showing me the robe, showing me this, showing me that, and he's saying, hey, like the Rockets are notorious for sending guys to the G League, which used to be called the D League when I was playing. So be prepared. And I remember like going to the D League or G League back then was like it was hard not to take it as an insult. Because you're at the top, you get drafted, you go to training camp, you're in the NBA, then you gotta, take the bus and commercial flights in Delaware and like crazy shit. So it's kind of it's a roller coaster. And so I just remember I was like, he said that, and I was like, man, I don't want to go to the D League. And we start off and we lose, and Marcus is getting some minutes, Demo is getting some minutes. I'm not playing at all. And I remember there was a game, like the 3rd or 4th game, we were getting blown out, and McHale put me in, and I had like a quick 10. And I remember, and like I was diving on the floor, and I remember there was a lockout my draft year where the team I played in France was called Cholet. They didn't give me my like clearance to come back to the NBA. So I went to training camp, and I had to sit there and watch like the first 4 days of training camp, not able to participate because the team I wouldn't played. So I remember I took that time, and I'm sitting there watching everything. I'm seeing whatever, I'm hearing all the terminology. And these guys they're going 2-a-days. They're getting killed. So I go in the 4th or 5th day, they're exhausted. And I remember I'm fresh. I'm fucking flying around everywhere. I'm taking charges. I'm diving on the floor. 4th game, they said, hey, come to the bus is leaving here or whatever. We're going to the plane. And I go on, I get to the plane, like the 5th game of the year, and Marcus Morris isn't there. And I'm like, where's Marcus? He's like, Marcus went to the D League. And I just remember looking at Courtney Lee like, holy shit. I didn't have to go to the D League. Marcus Morris, the lottery pick, went, and I end up starting that game. So now I'm like, I'm going to the practice facility thinking I'm literally going to the D League, and I end up starting the next game on the Houston Rockets. Like that to me was like, okay, this is now it's real. Now it's on.
But look, then I think it's early the next year. This is in the Wayback Machine in the Chandler Parsons Hall of Fame. I think it's November of 2012. You go within the span of 2 weeks, career highs, I think against the Knicks and the Heat, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe it's the Mavs and the Heat. I can't remember exactly. But you got to be thinking you're not even like a full year in the league because of the lockout. You're going 25 plus, 30 plus. At that moment, are people starting to treat you differently? And I don't mean like, oh my God, it's Chandler Parsons, but like defensively, do you see adjustments? Are teammates treating you differently? Coaches treating you differently? What happens then?
Yeah. Well, I mean, when you start playing more and you start playing more minutes, you don't practice as much the next day. You know what I mean? You're not one of the guys that are having to play one-on-one afterwards to stay in shape. So that immediately changed. But you're still a rookie. I'm still a rookie on this team with, Luis Scola and Kevin Martin, Kyle Lowry. So I'm still carrying their luggage. I'm still doing things like that. I'm just starting, hooping. Um, and yeah, that just, it all happened so fast, dude. And you don't get treated differently anymore. You get a lot of attention. And me, I was a second round pick, so I was almost like a pleasant surprise. People didn't think I was going to be that good, which is funny to me. To me, I was a 4-year college player. I was ready to play. I think the lockout really helped me because the guys took that time off pretty much, and I played in the Euro League for 2 or 3 months. So when I was done, the lockout ended, I was in tip-top shape. I was just playing against, in the second best league in the world. So I was ready to compete right away. So I think that time, the lockout actually kind of helped me in a weird way. But yeah, it was crazy, and like I said, it all just happened so fast. And then there's always that doubt, right, of whether you can fit, whether you're good enough. Especially for me, dude, I'm just a normal slow white dude from Orlando that used to think guys are fucking aliens when I'd see him at the mall in Orlando. I remember I freaked out when I would see like Turkaloo at the mall. Like these guys were my heroes, and now I'm starting in the NBA playing for Kevin McHale, like ball in my hands in the fourth quarter. It was a whirlwind. And um I was lucky enough to play in a situation where I got minutes right away. There's a lot of talented dudes that didn't get that opportunity. I always say Marshawn Brooks. You guys remember Marshawn Brooks?
Yeah.
Kid from Providence. He was a stud. And I'm just, whatever opportunity he had, it wasn't the right fit. It was a bad situation. And now he had to go overseas and play in China. And so like I was lucky enough to get a situation where I got the right system, the right players, the right coach that believed in me early. And I took advantage of that, but it could have easily have went the other way.
Before we let you go, NBA draft coming up. No standout, no Wembanyama, not even a Paolo Banchero. Give us your take on how this draft looks from a analyst and also former player perspective.
Yeah, well, we don't know yet. There could be a Paolo in this draft, right? We have no idea. I went to the gym the other day. My agent James Dunleavy at XL Sports, they repped Matas. This kid's a freak, and I watched him. He's one of the more athletic kids I've ever seen. This kid's bounce is nuts. He needs to work on his shot a little bit. It's a little slow and a kind of funny release, but this kid's talking shit. He's oozing with confidence. Freak athlete. I mean, freak. So I love him a lot. I don't know. I'm not familiar with the two French kids. I could go 1 and 2, honestly, too much. But I also love Jacoby Walker from Baylor. He's a 6'9", 6'10" shooter. The way he moves, the way he can get a quick release, come off screens. I love him. I think he's kind of fallen off for whatever reason. You can get him in like the late lottery. So there's always going to be talent. There's always going to be surprises. There is no Zion. There's no Wemby this year. But that's not to say it couldn't end up being a really, really deep draft. So I'm excited for it. There's going to be some sleepers in this draft. And there's a lot of talent always. So these kids are reaching their dreams and it's happening for them. So I'm excited for that. But I really like Matas and Jacoby Walker, kind of my two sleepers in this draft.
Chandler Parsons, analyst, FanDuel TV, run it back with Beetle, Shams. That was great, brother. That was fantastic. As a reminder, the Favorites podcast is presented by Bet365. Bet365 doesn't do ordinary. That's why you get more boosts with them than with anyone else. Every day they power up the odds on hundreds of bets to give you a chance to win more. Bet365 boosts specific markets, your winnings, and even parlays. And they don't stop there. Keep an eye out for their biggest and best odds with the incredible Super Boost. Check out the boost and see why it's never ordinary at Bet365. Must be 21 or older and present in Arizona, Colorado, Indiana, Iowa, Louisiana, North Carolina, New Jersey, Ohio, Virginia, or 18 and older in Kentucky. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa. Terms, conditions, restrictions apply. Simon and I are back with our next episode of The Favorites on the Action Network YouTube page Tuesday, 11 a.m. Eastern. Download us from Spotify, Apple Pods, wherever you get your pods. Rate, review, subscribe, leave us 5 stars, say whatever you want. Feedback is a gift. Until next time.